The year is 2008, and American sprinter Allyson Felix is making her second Olympic showing in Beijing. She's scheduled to run the 200 first, and after confidently making it to the finals, she would unfortunately be bested by Jamaican sprinter Veronica Campbell-Brown and would have to settle for her second silver in a row for the event. She would bring it back though in the 4x4 after running a killer 49-21 split as the second leg. So with this precedent set, she obviously wanted to have an individual title in some fashion by the time she arrived in London for the 2012 Olympics. As the years went by, Felix was able to secure a world title in 2009 and would be a fantastic asset in the relays within the next two world championships, securing a myriad of gold medals to add to her already growing collection. With every Olympic cycle that comes around though, obviously every pro is preparing day in and day out for this occasion. They're trying to peak at just the right time to get to the USA final, and to then land a spot on the biggest athletic stage on Earth. However, a subsection of up-and-comers wanted it just as badly too, and while they're on paper less experienced and a bit younger overall, these athletes had something unique up their sleeve. Time and time again, NCAA prodigies have either pulled off tremendous upsets, or have had these insane breakout seasons during the tail end of their collegiate careers. Their sporadic improvement combined with their eagerness for a potential professional career puts them in this unique X-Factor category where they can upset just about anyone at any time. For the 2011 season list in the women's 200 meters, two collegiate up-and-comers would land themselves in the top 5 worldwide, which was LSU sophomore Kimberlyn Duncan and Texas A&M junior Jennifer Tarmo. One of these women would forego the rest of their NCAA eligibility though, as Tarmo would be the one to pursue a professional career in the sport and spend her time specifically training for the 2012 Olympics. Duncan opted to continue her collegiate endeavors at LSU, but still planned on competing at the USA Championship set a few weeks after the NCAA ones. Both athletes looked to be in great form going into USA's, and when the entries list came out, Tarmo would be competing in both the 100 and 200, while Duncan focused on the 2 only. Interestingly enough, Felix, the prime contender for the 2 and 4, opted to enter the 1 and 2 instead of the 2 and 4 double. So there was potential for this to shake up the spots a bit for the 100, assuming she'd make the final there. The conditions are solid for USA's this year. Good temps, great crowd, and a tasteful tailwind on the home stretch for the sprinters. This sets the tone for the country's best to compete for their spots on the Olympic squad. Since the 100 is the first of the sprints to occur, Duncan would not be present since she was running the 2. Tarmo, however, opened up the 100-meter heats with a PR right off the bat. The fact that this was already her personal best, though, did make it a bit worrying how she would fare in the semis against the seasoned veterans. To add more pressure, she would then be thrown into the toughest heat out of the 3, but would PR yet again running 11:10. Unfortunately, her 11:10 was just the slightest bit slower than English Gardner's 11:10, so an automatic qualifier was out of the question. However, because her heat was already so fast, she would easily make it on time, ranking 4th going into the finals. A final like this, though, would likely require yet another PR from Tarmo. 11:10 was fast, sure, but would it be enough to make the team? Felix was also quite the wild card in this event, despite her already running under 11 on 3 separate occasions, because it was a little uncertain for her how fast she would be today, given her semis time going in. As the women line up for their potentially once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, 2 of them would be well across the line to punch their ticket to London, but 2 other athletes would end up being a part of one of the closest races ever recorded in track and field history.
Those 2 to the line together. It will be Jenner to win it. Madison in second and close for third. I think Allison Felix is just off of the team. Carmelita Jeter wins. Felix, who gets the third spot?
Whoa.
Wow.
Of a second, Tarmo over Felix.
That's why you got to get your hands off that line, because the difference of an eyelash.
By the slightest possible amount, Geneva Tarmo secured her first ever ticket to the Olympics. Not only would she be representing America for the first time at these events, but she still had the 200 to run to capture another spot too. A truly emotional and emphatic moment for the Aggies alumni, and the fact that she took the spot from Allison Felix made it all the more impressive too. To describe just how close this race was, both athletes had run the exact same time of 11.068, but the announcer declared Tarmo the winner, and she could not have been more ecstatic. After a victory lap, and likely a celebratory night at the hotel, Tarmo would now prepare for the 200, as she was now able to rest knowing regardless of what happens in that event, she will still be representing the USA at the Olympics. Except, the results you see on the screen now were actually unofficial, because just 45 minutes later, a press conference would reveal that not only did Tarmo not take the Olympic spot from Felix, but also that Felix didn't quite take the spot from Tarmo either.
In short, I'll start with a headline, which is that we have a dead heat for third place in the women's 100 meters. They initially posted Tarmo as finishing third in the unofficial results that you saw on the Hayward Field scoreboard. Timers simultaneously and immediately called referees to notify them of a potential dead heat. The photo finish image, which was shot at 3,000 frames per second, was then analyzed by timers and referees and unanimously ruled to be a dead heat based on the visual evidence.
In a shocking and outright confusing turn of events, USATF officially declared the placements between Geneva Tarmo and Allison Felix a dead heat or a tie. The decision to give Tarmo the Olympic qualifying spot was reverted about 45 minutes after the race, following an appeal by Flash Results timer Roger Jennings. In an interview with Let's Run, he had initially called it as Tarmo winning over Felix from what he could see, but the results were considered unofficial at the time, and he wanted to bring in multiple other referees to get other opinions before declaring the results official. After much more analysis and deliberation, they felt like they had no other choice but to call it a dead heat. And once USATF made it official in their press conference shortly after, Felix and Tarmo were unquestionably tied for third. How exactly did they come to this decision though? So for this race, there are two cameras for timing, one outside of the infield and one on the infield. If the outside camera isn't sufficient enough to call a close heat, timers will immediately divert their attention to the infield camera. This is normally the deal breaker in just about any close race you'll watch, but in this specific case, not even the camera, the timing system, or really anything could differentiate it. The torso is the defining feature of the body that determines when they come across the finish line. But in this finish line picture, it's pretty hard to tell the more you look at it. This line here, as shown in the previous example, represents when they officially come across the finish. Based on this visual evidence specifically though, it really is by all accounts impossible to determine who won this race. So a dead heat was very likely the correct decision here. There was another issue that arose though. The top three, assuming they had the standard, go to the Olympics. So if both Felix and Tarmo had the standard, which they did, how do you choose who goes then? So you can't just send 4 athletes from a country to the Olympics. So surely there had to be some rule or alternative thing to be put in place for this, right?
Do we know for sure that there's no procedure already in place?
We don't have a procedure in place, that's correct.
Are the athletes aware?
Probably not, because it was just determined.
Why did they bring her in her as third place finisher and Allison was told she was fourth if this was going on?
I know in the mix-zone we discussed that there was a protest going on. That was immediately discussed in the mix-zone. So as soon as we have a determination, we will make that public, and we will both post it on usatf.org and also email it out. But as of right now, we have a dead heat.
USATF stated they did not have a protocol set in place to solve this issue, and so they were left scrambling for ideas to figure out what to do with these two athletes. After some spitballing behind the scenes from all parties, they eventually proposed two options. One, the athletes can agree to a coin flip, or two, they agree to a runoff. In other words, a 1v1 tiebreaker, 100-meter sprint to decide who gets to go to London. If both athletes choose separate options though, the runoff does take priority, but if neither athlete wants to choose a side at all, then the coin flip will take priority. Since the 200 heats were set to happen just a couple days later, neither athlete had made a decision just yet, mainly because they were instructed to by their coach, Bob Kersey. Tarmo and Felix did both have a legitimate shot at making the 200 team, so Kersey wanted them to focus on just that for now. The two qualified for the finals, and Felix would win, smashing the meeting record running 21:69, but Tarmo was unfortunately bested by the field, finishing in 5th. Shortly following this race, the two would officially agree to a runoff, and it would be formally addressed by USATF that the two would race the very next day, and that it would be broadcasted during the USA Swimming Trials. As fans excitedly waited to see this one-of-a-kind race, their excitement would rise just as quickly as their disappointment would surface shortly after, because Jennifer Tarmo would release a statement that would end up surprising the USA track scene.
Went home, and without a ball, there's no game to play. Tarmo pulling the plug on a 100-meter duel against Allison Felix, scheduled Monday. The winner runs the 100 at the Olympics. Then Tarmo conceded. Runoff? Off. Hey, don't criticize her until you've run 100 meters in her moccasins. She earned her spot last month in the original 100-meter final. Then the sport overturned her third-place finish after she'd received her medal. Here's what she said Monday. Running in this runoff came down to how I felt internally. Would my heart be at peace running, or would I not be at peace? If I was at peace, I would have run. My heart was not at peace with running. Michael Phelps will not.
Jennifer Tarmo opted out entirely of the runoff and would simply hand over her spot to Allison Felix for the 2012 Olympics. A very abrupt and heartbreaking way to end what could have been an amazing and unique race to witness. But Tarmo stated her head was not in the right place, and for the most part, could you really blame her? Not only did she live the facade of thinking she made the Olympics for the first time ever, but she allegedly hadn't been aware until as late as that night through a phone call that she hadn't done so. Not to mention, she states that she, nor her agent, could have protested the results since they were both in doping control. But in all fairness, it's unlikely this would have changed anything. Tarmo very likely wanted redemption in the runoff after missing her spot in her strongest event, but another part of her felt devoid of any competitive spirit after having her spot basically taken away. But thankfully, she was still granted a spot on the 4x1 team for the Olympics. She would run in the heats, but the finals would use a different team without her, where they would end up breaking the world record. Nevertheless, Tarmo would still be handed an Olympic gold medal as a result, so all things considered, the situation was fairly remedied. But there is a possibility a chip on the shoulder likely remained on Tarmo. Felix would place 5th in the 100, won the 200, helped win the 4x1, and even did the 4x4 to go home with 3 gold medals for her 3rd Olympic showing. Tarmo's career following a hectic and disappointing 2012 would show solid improvements throughout the years, as she would break 11 in the 100 for the first time ever, but unfortunately finished in 4th at USA's to just miss the world team. In the 200 though, she would secure her spot to make her first ever world team individually, and even made the finals, placing 5th in Moscow, along with a silver medal in the 4x1. In 2014, she won her first USA Championships, won a World Relay title, and overall just went on to have a very solid career, retiring as one of America's best sprinters. Felix's career can be summed up quickly, but at the same time, is difficult to put into words just how insane it was. In essence, she continued to secure gold medals at nearly every single world-class meet she entered, and would ultimately retire in 2022 as the most decorated athlete in track and field history. The long-term effect this race had is pretty negligible, all things considered. Tarmo had a very solid career all around, and Felix obviously had a great one too. However, you can't help but still feel bad for Tarmo at that moment in time. To make an Olympic team for the first time ever is a feeling like no other, and after taking a victory lap and going back to your hotel to celebrate, it's a jarring level of heartbreak to receive that phone call where they changed their minds and that you technically hadn't fulfilled your goals. The runoff would have been amazing to watch and would have made this debacle all the more memorable. But it's also not too surprising that Tarmo pulled out of a race she just didn't feel right doing. In the end, no bad blood was exchanged as time went on, and the two went on to have great careers. But this race will go down in history as a race that not only is defined by its closeness, but a race that single-handedly created a new role in the track and field system. This is the story of the closest race in track and field, and thanks for watching. Thank you to all my patrons for supporting the channel, and if you want to support the channel for more track and field content like this, come on over and become a patron, drop a sub, and check out my other links below. I'll see you on whatever video I upload next, and take care.